My name's Greg Coles. I'm a writer and I get to hang out with cool people and it's really fun. And I get to do stuff like chat with Lindsay about a new album. Which by the way, I'm super excited for this song and yeah, really, really eager. Well, I'm excited for the whole album, but I'm excited for this
Same.
song in particular. Um, I think when I think of Chosen Family, one of the things that for me differentiates family from sort of your run of the mill friendship or acquaintanceship is it feels like family there's this underlying understanding that you don't have to come to it put together.
Mm,
And maybe that's true of like a really proper good friendship too. Maybe in some ways like the really good friendships are the ones that sort of blur into family anyway. But when I think about the less good friendship or more the acquaintanceship, it feels like the sort of thing that you're under some kind of social obligation to be like, make sure that as I enter in, I have put myself together, and there's some expectation that they also have put themselves together.
hmm
And we're both giving each other our best in this moment, and then we'll leave and actually deal with the rest of life as it really is. And
Right.
I think for me, where friends turn into the really good friends or become the familial kind of friendship, it's the point at which we start actually being able to do all the real life things together. And it sort of means, I guess it means that we stop being hospitable to each other, and start just having our lives intertwined.
Yeah.
Um, and so I think, yeah, I think when I feel most family with people is when there's the most freedom to be like, let yourself in. We're a little busy with something right now. We'll come say hi later. Oh, yeah, make yourself at home. You need to work at our kitchen table for an hour? Sure, no problem. Help yourself to some food. It came out pretty bad, but it's food. Like those sorts of things that just feel like this is life. And I think that privilege of just doing those sorts of ordinary things with each other
Mm,
instead of just having our relationship be about these special or singular moments, just letting it be all of life embedded in really beautiful ways.
yeah. It sounds very organic and very free.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I love that. So who would you say um some of your chosen family right now,
Yeah.
if you feel
I
like that is something that exists for you right now?
Yeah, I mean, there are so many different expressions
Mhm.
of chosen family that I feel like I'm privileged to have in my life. One that's been significant for me locally in this season of my life is people I've gotten to be really close with through my church expression here in Boise.
Yeah.
So it's already a fairly small church, but then even within that, there are a couple families in particular that I've just found our lives are just really beautifully, deeply embedded together. And so, for instance, there's one family who by default now has sort of given me a categorical invitation to dinner every night. And they're like, we expect that you're always coming to dinner and feel free to inform us if you're not, but there will always be food for you and things
Aw.
like that. That just make it really easy to feel like, oh yeah, we were all doing life and like they were gonna eat, I was gonna eat, so let's
Yeah.
eat in the same place. Um, uh, yeah, I think of that family in particular, and another family that like I've gotten to go visit the family cabin, and just things that I think getting to participate in those really ordinary parts of the way
Mm.
they do their family life, and be like, oh, I get to join you for this. What fun!
Right. Yeah, because it is often like maybe this, the special moments like holidays or something that maybe people are invited to, but to be invited into the ordinary and the laundry and the chaos of kids maybe that are around, like, yeah, that feels a lot different, and but in a good way.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Hmm. Um, so that's kind of some of the beautiful aspects of the chosen family that you've found, it sounds like. Is there anything else particularly beautiful, do you feel like, about this form of chosen family?
I think one of the things that's really beautiful about it for me, and in terms of my own sort of spiritual growth and development, is
Mhm.
I think by default, there's probably something at the core of my soul that already kind of wants to feel like the world is about me. And I think, I mean, one of the common critiques I hear of singleness generally, especially from evangelicals who are like, and that's why everyone should be married if they really love the Lord. Like one of the critiques is like, single people are just so selfish, like they just think about themselves. And well, I certainly don't think that's categorically true. And I feel like if you think that is categorically true, Jesus and the Apostle Paul have a bone to pick with you. Like I do think there is a way of doing singleness
Mhm.
that tends very much to make the rhythms of your life revolve around yourself, your needs, your interests, the
Yeah.
story that accrues around you. And I think one of the things that's been really beautiful for me about entering into familial space
Mm,
and having those kinds of relationships is that I become more and more enrolled in the stories that are not about me. Um,
mm.
and I can come increasingly to have the privilege of playing sort of a supporting cast role in other people's lives.
Yeah.
Because I think increasingly one of my spiritual goals is to see myself as like fourth build cast in other people's movies. Like I'm not at the top of the credits, I'm like way down when the music has already changed. Like that's about where my life shows up.
Mm,
I think that reorientation to think of myself as not the most important person around, I think that
yeah.
happens more and more the more my life becomes embedded with other people's lives.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. What do you feel like is something particularly difficult about the forms of chosen family that you've found?
Yeah, I think I mean some of it I think is just the difficulty that comes with the experience of being human.
Yeah.
I feel like every time people talk to me about like I have this amazing chosen family and it's just the best thing ever and nothing could ever go wrong. Part of me is like, look, I think the idea of chosen family could be great and brilliant and wonderful. And yet at the end of the day, like you are a human being making
Yeah.
family with other human beings. And at
It's
some point, it's going to suck because one thing that we know to be theologically true of human beings is that we all suck. Um,
that
and,
is true.
and so I think, um, I mean, I think there are particular ways that can manifest, and it
Mm,
manifests more in some ways the more richly embedded we are
mm,
with other people, right? The more my relationships are not just comprised of me giving people a well curated 45-minute chunk of my time before I go home and deal with all my crap. um, the more our dealing with our crap is a thing that we do together, the more we
mm.
maybe see the sides of ourselves that we're like, oh, that's actually I don't like that
Right.
about you, or I don't like that about me, perhaps. Um,
Mhm.
and so I think those things can come to the surface more easily, or they're just more observable because we observe them through other people's eyes as well as through our own.
Right.
And I think, yeah, I think that can create pain and difficulty and uncertainty, and yet it it seems to me that it's still so worth it because the alternative is to never be intimate enough with someone to even discover those things.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think I think the cost of being invulnerable is so much greater than the cost of being vulnerable.
Right. It reminds me of that, the quote, I think it's tossed around a lot, but to love it all is to be vulnerable by C.S.
Mm,
Lewis. Like
yes,
I,
absolutely.
I find that to be so true that if we want to give and receive love, inevitably there's going to be vulnerability and there's going to be hurt that comes along with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That Lewis passage, where he's like, "You want to know how to like protect your heart and make it safe from everything? Like, I'll tell you. Like, just like stay
Right.
away. Make sure that you never get connected to, and you'll be safe. And
Hmm.
and you'll be miserable, and you'll experience no love, but you'll be safe. And
Yeah.
those are your choices. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So what would you say, what maybe some encouragement you would give to others who maybe have not found the sort of chosen family that you seem to have right now, but would like to?
Yeah. I think the number one thing I would say is I would encourage you to be open to receiving that family in places that you don't expect it.
Mm,
Um, because I think sometimes we go into it with a vision of like, okay, I want God to provide some family for me, and let me give him my checklist of like the
right.
things that this family needs to be and the things it needs to not be. Um, and I wonder if sometimes we're so attached to our own vision of what it's going to look
Mm,
like that the thing that God actually wants to give us, we just skip right by, and we're like, well, they invited me over, but their family sucks. Like, not a
yeah.
chance I'm going to eat there. And I don't know. I mean, um, I think I think so often in my life, the people who have wound up being those really deep family people, they're just not the people that I would have crafted for myself. Like, I
Yeah.
love them to death. They're wonderful and amazing. And also, if you had sat me down and been like, make up a dream friend, like I would have dreamed up someone very different. Um, and so I think to approach God open-handedly, because in the end, I do feel like so much of it is not something we can just conjure for ourselves. It's not something that we can go into it
Yeah.
and be like, by my effort, I will devise this kind of family for myself. Like, I think these are gifts that God gives.
Mm,
But I think in order to receive the gifts God gives, we have to be we have to be willing to let God be a little creative,
yeah.
um, even in ways that we perhaps would not have chosen to endorse his creativity.
For sure. Yeah. 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 That makes a lot of sense. I think personally, for me, I have sometimes come with a list of like, this is what I'm looking for, God, like exactly these things, and like a friendship or whatever. But sometimes God really does, he just like kind of, it's like, okay, yeah, those are good things, but also look over here. Here's some
Mm,
other like good things.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and so, yeah, to be open to being surprised by the ways that God is forming family,
Mm,
um, and the opportunities. Yeah, I think that's really good encouragement.
mm.
Um, is there anything else you feel like we've missed in this conversation? Anything um, you'd like to add about chosen family in general? You feel like um, maybe is often not addressed in these conversations?
I think one other thing I'll throw in, and maybe it's helpful for folks, and maybe it's not. And if it's not applicable to your life, then just check it out with
Mhm.
the rest of the trash.
Sure. Sure.
But I think something that I have sometimes experienced in my own life, and maybe sometimes heard from others who are sharing with me, uh, is there can be a tendency when we're feeling deep loneliness, or deep dissatisfaction,
Mhm.
in our lives, and the absence of certain kinds of relational connection. I think the temptation can be to think of a certain kind of relationship, this chosen family, this deep friendship, and be like, oh, and once I have it, like that will solve things. Like then I will
Yeah.
finally, then I'll finally have what I need to have that rich, deep fulfillment. And in my own experience, there can be this weird sort of chicken and egg dynamic where, until you're deeply satisfied, in the person of Jesus, such that you can say like, I believe that you're going to provide people for me because I know that's part of what I need as a human being.
Mhm.
But I also believe that like you yourself are simply good enough for me. Um,
Mm.
uh, I think if we don't have that with Jesus in our own
Yeah.
hearts, then we'll always go into any other kind of human relationship with a hope that it's going to do some of the work that has to be work between us and Jesus.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of, have you ever seen the movie Cool Runnings? Um,
Oh my gosh, yes, with the Jamaican bobsled team.
Yes, yes. Okay, so for those of you who have not seen this movie, there's a Jamaican bobsled team, and they get this coach who used to be a bobsledder. Anyway, the plot of the movie is not important, but you can go watch it later. But there's this moment where their coach says to them, because they're in the Olympics and they're trying to get a medal in the Olympics, as one does in
Mhm.
the Olympics, and the coach says to them, if you're not enough without the metal, you'll never be enough with it.
Uh,
And I maybe there's a bit of that dynamic in Chosen Family. Like, it is so wonderful and beautiful, and I truly believe that it's part of what Jesus wants to give you
mm,
as you follow him. But also, if you and Jesus are not enough without these other things, then you'll never be enough with them, because you'll always be trying to make those things take the place that Jesus himself
yeah.
wants to have in you.
Yeah, that is that is a really, really good thing to think about too. And now I'm thinking of the song Never Enough in The Greatest Showman.
Yes. Uh,
It
yes.
ongoing the chorus kept on playing in my head as you were answering this particular question. I was like, yeah, that's appropriate.
If we could do a little mashup maybe of your song Chosen with
I
Never Enough from The Greatest Showman, I would be very curious in that artistic movement.
I'm on board. Yes.
My people will call your people.
Perfect. Let's get it done. That's hilarious. Well, thank you so much for being willing to talk about this topic. I know it's an important one in, side B spaces, but also I think it's an important one really for all of us to have. So,
Yeah.
regardless if you're gay or same sex attracted or straight or um, whatever season of life you find yourself in. Um, so, I appreciate you so much. Thank you for all of the good work you're doing. And if you want to plug your book a little bit, I would love that because I'm very excited to read it.
Oh my gosh, yeah, I would be delighted. And before I do that, I will also say, while we're giving thanks, thank you for doing
Yeah,
this amazing project. I'm really, really excited to
absolutely.
hear the snippets I've heard. I've been like, oh, this is I can't wait to listen to the whole album.
Oh,
So really, really jazzed for you. But yes, speaking of fun artistic projects, this
yeah.
is The Limits of My World. And conveniently, there's a box of like 100 books sitting over in the other corner of my office. So I just have like books strewn everywhere right now.
Incredible.
But yeah, this is a novel, my first novel. So I've got a couple of memoirs out, but a novel that sort of explores how language shapes the way we perceive reality as human beings,
Hmm.
and yeah, what we think of as the world. And so it's a science fiction story. I think it's a really interesting story, but I also just think it's philosophically fun. And so part of me is like, forget about the fact that it's an interesting novel. Just read it because it's philosophically interesting. But that's probably the wrong way to convince people to read a novel.
I'm
Um,
sure linguistically interesting too because you are a linguist. Yes.
it's true. I dabble. So yeah,
Mhm.
one of my friends, after he read it, he was like, I thought to myself, only Greg could write this book, because like he was like, every
Yeah,
word in it has like two different etymologies that are like relevant to the story. So
incredible.
it's a fun time. It's been a fun time for me.
Yeah.
So I hope that some others find it a fun time as well. I would love to share that fun with them.
Awesome. I'm thrilled to be receiving it soon in the mail. I'm looking forward to that.